Welcome, everyone. I'm Greg Schnell, the Canadian technician, here to host the Market Buzz. This show looks at weekly setups across the U.S. market. Using the tools available on StockCharts, we'll look for long time frame trades. Please subscribe to my articles, Twitter feed, and gregschnell.com. Lots going on out there. We've been going sideways for 3 days now and working on our fourth day, and that's a bit of a problem. So a little bit worried here. So this is what we're going to cover off. We're going to talk about prior highs, why they're so important, why you want to judge when you're around them, and then what to worry about here. I had this on the Wednesday edition, and it was the 3,000 things. We're at the 3,000 level. So Wednesday morning, we woke up just below 3,000, and now we're sitting back kind of where we were Wednesday morning again after having a 1 hour spurt yesterday morning about that. So we're going to get into that level of detail today and just briefly talk about this prior high situation, just things to look at. And then financials, had great earnings from JP Morgan, and then we've done nothing. We've just paused again. Bonds they've been rolling over. They've held sideways so far this week. So Friday's low, they've been sitting right around the same level. So low in price. So just keep watching that. But I still think that move is over, but maybe I'm wrong here. India is an interesting chart this week, and so we're going to jump into that one a little bit. And as one thing I'd like to talk about specifically is we've got a Canadian Technician Day tomorrow, and we've got 5 speakers. 3 of the speakers Canadian, 2 of the speakers are from the US. We'll have lots of good information out there. So if you'd like to join me, you can go to the CSTA website, csta.org, and click on the online button for $35. It's a pretty good bargain, and we'd be recording that. So if you didn't have time to watch it tomorrow during the day, then you can make sure that you have that. I'm just going to turn off notifications on this other computer so it doesn't bong in the background. Okay, so anyway, with that, please look at the other site there if you're interested. I think there's 5 great speakers there. Jeff Hirsch is on there, Tom Boley, Dwight Galusha, Barry Powley, and myself. So anyway, hopefully you find something you'd like to see there. So let's get into it. This is what I want to talk about. So I look at this chart all the time. It's up on my monitor on the left-hand side of my desk, and I have a vertical panel set up. I've shown this many times during Market Buzz. But you can see that we're sitting on this trend line here going back to October the 8th. And the reason I picked this trend line is kind of got more support in here. So this one included 2, 3, 4. And now here we're sitting out here on this far end. I've also got this thin black line, and we're going to zoom out a little bit to see what's going on here in a second. But you can see we had the thrust up off JP Morgan's earnings on Tuesday, and we got up to 3,000 and change, and then we struggled all day and closed the day roughly in the middle of the trading range. Wednesday, we came on board and we spent all day going sideways, no real price action. Thursday, we gap up on the open, make it higher high than the Tuesday high, give it all back right away, and spend all day jogging sideways. This morning we get up, can't really get any momentum going, and now we're testing the downside. So now we're looking at testing Wednesday's low. But the bigger issue here is we see this momentum wave has rolled over. We're still well positive here, but look at how close the NASDAQ is to its trend line. And I didn't change this from the Russell to the IWM. Sorry about that. So we're sitting here wondering, and one of the clues that we also have is that the Canadian market hasn't been able to get above this 100 EMA. So to me, the Canadian market is weaker than the US market, but you had a 500 point up period there in the last couple of days. So that would be this big gap up and then this big gap up. And all of that added together would suggest to me that we should have some serious power. But the TSX didn't rally at all for the most part. And so that's what makes me pause here, is why all of a sudden is the Canadian market not participating on the new highs? And that either tells me that you're doing it in groups that the Canadian market doesn't have, which could be. But the second component could be just that this top isn't going to work. Sorry, I didn't want to do the annotation. I wanted to change the time period. So this is a 10-day chart, and that's usually what I have up. But when I scroll down to the bottom of this chart, and I apologize for the scroll, just want to roll out to 1 month and give you an idea of what's going on here. So in the big picture, we've come off this October 3rd low and we're bouncing up. So this black line, I could run it back and it would be very close to this low. But we have this one candle where we thrust down to finish the day and then gapped up the next morning and got right back to where we were. The bottom line is this rally here, we've come up and now we're testing this 3,000 level. We got up to 3020 back in mid-September, and it was right around options expiration day there as well. I think this was options expiration day then, and we're on options expiration day today. So I want to keep watching that. We're a little bit higher in momentum. We're still above zero. And I know we normally use weekly charts here, but the issue when you're making tops and bottoms, one of the things you want to do is just watch the smaller price action to see how things are going. And the problem I have here is, we should be suddenly surging out of here and we're just gently moving along. So some of the other indicators that I have that I keep track of, we're literally, if you were measuring up, down, one's marginally higher than the other. One, if I use a different indicator, one's marginally weaker than the other on weekly charts. And we're just sitting at this 3,000 level, and I'm trying to figure out if we've got enough heartbeat to get going. So one of the things I did is I went and I looked for exceptional moves and on a weekly basis, and I got a ratio of 3 to 1, actually 4 to 1. It was not bad, but the real problem with that was almost 50 of them were healthcare. And so if you backed out healthcare, so pharmaceuticals and all that kind of stuff, if you just backed out that one specific industry group, all of a sudden we got down to a ratio of roughly 2 to 1, having exceptional moves to the upside. So considering we're testing this prior high, it's a little bit worrisome. Now, so you can see the price action here. So the NASDAQ composite doing the same thing, testing prior highs, and it's coming down, but it's already sitting on its lowest low trend line. I guess I could move down a little bit here, and that would bring this down to, call it 8,100 or so. When I look at all of these changes, that's what's bothering me, is I'm not getting the kind of spark I want to see. Now, let's scroll down really quick and go for 3 months and just widen out this view, or even 4. And then look at this in the same light. And what I want to talk about here, you can see with this big uptrend at the end of July, and literally when we broke it, we came straight down. We spent all of August bottoming, and then we tried to rally out of the hole. So we had this uptrend going on, and that was pretty nice. And then when we broke the uptrend, basically we marked the top and we started to roll down. We haven't marked the top yet, but I will say that the uptrend that we had going here has already broken. And it's only been 2 weeks, but we could have drawn that trend line, say here, and we, briefly broke it and then rallied back up again. That's the problem that we're having, though, is that we're chopping here and we're not getting a big thrust out of the base. So one of the things I was hoping was that this higher low in momentum would actually suggest we're going to start a big new thrust. And we're starting to get breakouts in the rest of the world, where France and Germany made new highs this week. I think the Nikkei, if I'm not mistaken, was making new highs, and then the India market has had a pretty good week. So we're starting to get some other markets that are in play, but the real question is, can the U.S. market get back above this high? And I'm just going to turn on my pinpoint here to help with the give you a bigger arrow to see. So when we look at this setup, it's just a little bit rusty for us, and that's one of the concerns. This is like a last gasp high, and we're having trouble getting through again. So I don't expect it to stay up here very long. But what you'll notice is that the options expiration day, so in this case, it was options expiration here. In September, it was right in here. So probably finishing here, and then we fell down from there. In August, this was the options expiration day, and it actually marked the low and started the rally. And in July, we ended up having a Fed meeting back here, but the options expiration day was in here on July 22nd. So a lot of these have been real turn dates, and we just want to be aware that we're sitting on one. Okay, so I think I've drilled that as far as we want to go. Let me just head over to the two banks and two bank ETFs. And what we see on this one was, of course, we had a great rally from JP Morgan this week to break out to a new high. But one of the problems we're sitting at is, the rest of the stocks, even though Citi came in okay, Bank of America came in okay, we had okay data, but we just haven't been able to push above this downtrend line. And I would have thought that having the big banks report this week, and we've had the Goldman Sachs wasn't quite as good, but Morgan Stanley was okay. So we had some other ancillary groups coming in as well, and they were okay. So I'm watching to see these break out, and this is pretty important to me. These two have to get going, and they haven't yet. When we go over to the semiconductors, one of the concerns I have here is you can see this big uptrend line, and once again, the semiconductors are testing prior highs. So we gap up on Tuesday and we take out the prior highs. That's beautiful. And then the first thing we do is roll over the next day. Next day, try to rally again, fail, come back. And we're just struggling. We can't seem to get going again. And so it's always important as you're breaking out to a new high to keep reviewing how the progress is going. And what we want to see here is that we would close above the prior highs and then be able to hold it for the next week. So far, we haven't been able to hold it for a day, and that is a bit of a concern. So keep watching these areas. Again, we're going to take a break here in a minute or so. And one of the things when we come back, I want to show you. So I went through and I just did a quick scan trying to find some larger moves on a weekly time frame. We're going to jump into those charts and talk specifically about them, what kind of stocks are starting to jump up. But the problem I'm having here is we don't even have the momentum we had off the August low, and it's tepid at best. So that's kind of where we're going to end. So let me just take a quick break here, and when we come back, we'll jump into those charts and I'll show you what.
The Chartwatchers newsletter features expert technical commentary about the current market from some of the industry's leading technical analysts. See what's really happening in the markets through their eyes and gain an edge in your own investing. The newsletter is packed full of insightful and educational articles intended to help you become a better investor. Whether you are brand new to charting or a seasoned technical analyst, each edition will provide a wealth of informative content. It's the best way to stay informed on all the latest news, events, updates, and additions here at StockCharts.com. Whether it's a new feature or blog, an upcoming conference, or a special sale, you'll hear it first in the Chartwatchers newsletter.
We're back and we're looking at my options expiration chart. And this is a chart that I manually draw out every month, just noting when the options expiration dates are. And the blue lines are when we have quadruple witching. So we just had one in September. And this is the earnings the peak earnings options expiration. And then the next one that we'd have in November is kind of the calm before the next storm. And then in December, we'll have the quadruple witching. So what we usually find is on the quadruple witching, we have extremely high volume show up, and that's pretty normal. But what we've got today is we want to just keep watching and see as we approach this prior high, are we going to just gap up and roll over again? And so far, we just don't seem to have enough thrust to get us going. So it's one of the reasons I'm worried about. And I started to put some money to work last Friday, and I took some pretty nice trades, and they've been up, but now all of a sudden they're all back to flat or even a little bit weaker than flat. And so so even though the chart is trending up here for the last few days, it's still not giving us the lift we want. And that's one of the things that I'm focused on here, is to try and figure out why that is. So this is a chart list that I made up just doing some scanning. And some of the things that are funny in here is I did not realize there was a 3x home builder with a ticker named Nail, which I thought was pretty funny. Anyway, the chart is beautiful, and what's to dislike about that? The home builders have worked out really well while the interest rates have been dropping, and so this this ETF has really taken off to the upside. I just thought it was kind of funny to have such a fun ticker. Anyway, here's two marijuana names that are starting to pick up, and as you can tell, these are very weak, living in the bottom right-hand corner. And here is a beauty company, and this one's living in the bottom right-hand corner. So hard to use those as good guides. Now, when I mentioned that it was all healthcare in this group, look at this is all biotech, and then we can go down here to pharmaceuticals, and look at how many pharmaceuticals. So between the two of them, they made up over 40 of the group. And then, of course, the marijuana names are in the healthcare space. So if they didn't get a sector attached to them when they were set up, that's another couple in here. All of that adds up together to say what's moving. And the problem I'm having is it's not what we want to see moving. And again, this isn't that tough a test, but while I'm going through these lists, it's giving me an idea of which way the market's pushing and pulling. And so far in communication services, we've only had three, and this doesn't look like one that is really worth talking about. Here's another one. And so all of the stuff having big exceptional moves isn't really in a great space. So one of the stocks I like is Shopify, and I own it, just in case you know. So anyway, so Shopify had a big push up this week, immediately gave it back the next day, and then spent yesterday kind of waddling in the middle of the range. But you see these huge moves and then giving it right back. And that's the real question, is why we have that. So this Francesca Holding chart is one that actually looks pretty good. Oh, sorry, I didn't cover off Aritzia. This is a clothing company, a little bit Lululemon-ish, but they have a wider variety. Anyway, rolling through these here, a lot of these charts are on the bottom end, like this one and this one. You're living down near the bottom of the zone. You're not exactly working with the best stocks. So here, this one is nice. It's pumped up to the top of the range. This one's just building a base forever. Here's GameStop after bouncing off $3. It's back to 6, which is a big improvement, but down from 15. Anyway, that stock, Geospace, hard to own. This fintech stock trending downward, not really one I want to pick up. A little late for this pharmaceutical. Anyway, we could quickly go through these pharma. They can spike or drop on any given day. So it takes a special level of courage to play these with any sort of meaningful position size. So I'm going to skip that group over. Here's Chronos again. This is the US side. So looking through these, here's Zymeworks. This one, at least the chart's heading up and to the right. So that one's a little more comforting. Looking across this group, so here's China cord blood group, and that's probably stem cell or something like that. But again, still might be breaking that downtrend, but that's about the best we've got there. And then Alpha Tech just wandering sideways. So my point is that when I look at these, I'm not seeing the names I want to see jumping to the forefront and really kind of getting us going. We're not seeing it in any of the sectors that we'd really like to see it in. So this McKesson, this is a nice U-turn on this one after an uptrend. So now making higher highs, so that's better. But looking through these very quickly, just scanning through them, is there something I want to see? And for the most part, this hookup, I think it's also marijuana related pharma. So once again, these things are trying to base, but they've been beaten up quite significantly. But I think you get the idea that as you look through these, what I'm looking for is a large move up here, and we're just not seeing it. Now, this Norboard one, I really like this one. This one, I think if you've been following, I mentioned that it was starting to improve in late July there, and it had turned up, and now we're making higher highs and higher lows. So that's a really nice one. ACOM, at least we're into something different here. But installed building products, obviously part of the home builders or builders group, and doing pretty well. But these charts are not great. Now, this is one thing that impresses me. Here's 4 gold stocks that have held up, even though gold's been dropping for at least a month. It made its high, I want to say, around September the 24th or 5th. and we've been drizzling lower since then. But this first majestic silver started to move, and if we're going to get some sort of a break, this Wesdome Mining has had fabulous results lately. If you're interested in a gold miner, I'd keep your eye on that one. First Quantum Minerals, if the US dollar is going to pull down, if things in China are going to start to improve, then all of a sudden this chart should turn up, and it's had a 10% move this week, so that's nice. First Majestic Silver, this is turning up too. So anyway, I'm not a fan of the golds and the precious metals right now, but I'd put those four on my watch list and just have them close by in case they start to move again. Here's Roku, finally a name that we've been talking about, and it's had a pretty nice move lately. So off of 100 back up to 135 or something. Uh, that's pretty solid, 30% bounce. And then Tech Data, this one just took off to the moon after consolidating for 6 months, so that's nice. I think the main concern I have is how thin the pickings are in this sort of exceptional move. So here's Magna Chip Semiconductor, and that one's finally broken out to a new high, so that's nice. But hopefully, just by scanning, going through those groups of scans, you can see the difference. That Roku, as an example, is one name we would expect to see on that list, but a whole bunch of the other names that I would have thought, in the software as a service sector or industry group, they have not really come to the fore. And so that's one of the things that really puzzles me, that they're sitting out in the back network here, this Perion network. That one, not a bad chart after having a big thrust up, pull back, and now maybe it can continue its second leg higher. The Smith Group is okay, but in general, all of the big ones, Slack, Workday, those types of companies, we're just not seeing the pull through. Okay, so from that, I think that's a big concern for me, that we're not getting the moves that we want. Now, I do want to go over and look at the Bombay Stock Exchange, and I want to get over to a weekly chart. And what we can see here is the momentum has been waning. We've had lower highs, but we're bouncing off the lows this week. We're getting a PPO cross to the upside for the first time in a while. And that is very bullish, and it wouldn't take much to get us back to 3-month highs. And again, we're dealing with the best demographics in the world. So this chart is starting to look pretty nice. And they did some interesting government policy announcements to make it easier for business and that kind of stuff. So they literally had this moonshot. I think it was an 8% swing or something in 1 week, and then went up here, then pulled all the way back down, and now we're starting to break out again. So now we've made a series of higher lows, and I think this is very positive price action. And if we could move out of here, this would be a nice way to play it. And of course, there's lots of different ETFs to look at for India. So there's INDA. And as these ETFs start to turn, a nice bullish push in India would be really nice. And trying to find it as the PPO is just starting to turn higher, I would think is a very nice place to take on this chart. So just starting to draw some trend lines on here. I think one that becomes obvious is this is long-term support. It's bouncing off last week. And then we've got a downtrend in momentum, or downtrend in price action here. And I think what I do with this downtrend is I just want to look at it as 34 to 35 bucks. If we start to get through $35, I think this looks really nice, and we've got the full stochastic starting to turn up. But even this chart with the best demographics in the world has paused. It was at $34 back in August of 2017. We're at $34 today. So we've round tripped for over 2 years with roughly a 10% move either way, a little bit more to the downside here. It's really important that we start to see the market break out here as a group. So we're having this long period of consolidation. And I mentioned it on the Wednesday show, but the correction from 2007 to 2009 was 18 months, and it was October 9th to March the 9th, and we literally rolled from 1575 all the way down to 666. It was quite a dramatic drop. And then what we've done here is we've consolidated for, in this case, 2 years with no real move, 10% move one way or the other. But we made our highs back in January of last year, and the S&P is up marginally higher than that, maybe 3 or 4%. But for the most part, it's been a sideways consolidation. So what we want to see now is everything start to break out together. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, that France and Germany had started to break out. And so those are nice charts, and I'm just going to go get them right now and show you what I mean. So on these charts with, there's France, and this is the French 5-year chart. And what we did this week was we pushed to a new, not only 52-week high, but an 11-year high. And now we've pulled back and gave it back again. And so much like the US market, does it have the strength to continue to power through? Now, in this particular case, we've got this big, strong trend line off 2015, and we keep rubbing up against it. This line here touches 7 or 8 times, and then we kind of threatened it a few times in here. Got very close and just give it back again. So a little bit concerning that we're going to close Friday without the breakout in France. And then the other thing is the German market, and let's just go get that chart. So on this German market, what you can see here is we pushed to new 52-week highs, got above it. This red line is where we were on Wednesday, I believe. And the main point of this is if we can break out and keep going, this is a really important level. But let's go down and look at the PPO. And what you see on here is this decline in momentum. And now we're about to test that line. And so let's just say everything works out roses and we break through it. To me, that's a very bullish sign, and I really want to be positive if that happens. On the other side, we have this nice piece of information that says if we can't get through this big downtrend in momentum, like a multi-year one, we're probably going to roll over right here, and this would mark a major place to get more defensive in the market rather than more aggressive. And here you can see we had a downtrend in momentum. We got to this zero level in 2018, and that's where the big swoon happened. Well, here we're trying to bounce off zero. That's bullish. We want to do that. We did that here in 2017, bounced up and then started to give it back. And it was this give back that we had that made it more concerning. That was that early 2018. So you're making highs but lower in momentum, and then roll over and fall down. So here we come back up to this same trend line in momentum. I want to be very aware of how that's going to work out. So don't go away. This show's just getting started. If we break out to the upside, you want to be very bullish, and this is going to work out great. Price has broken out to the upside. Now it's given it back. I think we're sitting right behind the red line for our close. Yeah, 1260, 650. So right on the red line. I think the bigger issue that we've got is making sure all of these charts actually do start to break out, and the US could break out. Now, we still have tech earnings to come in the next 2 weeks, so there's some good stuff coming down the pipe. We know Microsoft will probably give us good numbers, that kind of thing. So I don't want to get too defensive yet, but I definitely want to be aware of the problem of trying to get through all these new highs. And semiconductors failed to hold. France failed to hold. Germany failed to hold. So it's really important to stay in tune. So anyway, don't forget to go to gregschnell.com. That's over here. The new website is up. You can go to private investors, and I'm trying to get the confirmation emails working. So just let me finish that today, and then hopefully things will work better. So thanks for taking the time to join me on Market Buzz. Market Buzz airs live Wednesday and Friday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time, 7:30 a.m. Pacific Time on StockCharts TV. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Join me at CST.